Zydrunas seizes up in a massive convulsion, tearing IV tubes from both his arms. The monitor drone assigned to watch over his condition activates its silent alarm. A nurse's running footsteps echo through the hall, speeding toward his room. Writhing in agony and cursing the Chiolim name, the old man once again feels the heat of the burning star. But as the feeling fades, dreamlike, he wonders. He doesn't remember being there himself, at the star. Not like he normally does. In fact, the last place he remembers being himself is at the crosswalk. But that is a fleeting memory. The heat of the big, blue-white star blooms in his mind again, burning. Then, that alien, smothering presence consumes him with Ud's fury and Ud's fiery death. Zydrunas squeezes his eyes shut, shivers just thinking about it. The way that thing bled into his mind and raged. The way Ud tried to replace him with something else. Something without a proper shape. Something oozing and slimy, ravenous, deadly. Zydrunas opens his eyes, looks at his hands, and almost sighs with relief. Still flesh and bone. A few moments pass. His breathing slows. His body calms. His mind, on the other hand, races with questions. Questions about this creature, this ooze, this Chisilinguru wa Jama Isul. Questions about this Krellikar. Will the man, in reality, be to blame for the slime's death? A curse of the Chiolim name jumps to the front of Zydrunas' mind, startles him. He shakes his head for clarity. This isn't his hate, he tells himself. Not his. But the lingering touch of the ooze's mind, it jumbles things up, makes it hard for him to maintain his old sense of self. He licks his cracked black lips. No, he thinks with conviction he doesn't feel. Not his hate. He looks to the side with worry in his eyes, focuses on the outer world to avoid his inner turmoil. Shiny wet red stains grow around his elbows on clean white sheets. His blood. He wonders where he is as his eyes wander down to his bleeding arms. Doesn't hurt at all. The newly arrived and harried Datubu nurse reinserts his intravenous feeds, and the anesthetic reasserts its influence. Zydrunas watches the nurse. His eyes lose focus. It feels like he's looking into the room from far away, as if the Datubu is working to heal someone else. The old man yawns. He'll have to remember to do some research, find out just what this Krellikar fella is all about. And as Zydrunas' mind loses its grip on the last of his conscious thoughts, a curse of the Chiolim name twists his lips. Zydrunas wakes up in the hospital recovery ward with an agonized shout. He looks around the room in a panic. Why is he so cold all of a sudden? Cool air blows down from a vent. Ud had just died at the edge of a blue-white star, burning beyond hot. But it wasn't him, damn it! Not him! A few moments of frustration pass. His eyes take their time to focus on the room, on the here and now. His rapid breathing slows, but still it bothers him, having trouble separating his own thoughts from the ooze's. His uneasy feelings become pacified somewhat by the soft, soothing music playing over the PA, but an unsettling tension haunts his mind. He looks around the starched and sterilized room, then looks down at his own body covered by unnaturally white hospital sheets. His bony feet and knobby knees make two pairs of small snowy peaks out of his bedding. He sniffs. The room smells pretty nice. Out of a quick curiosity, he turns his head to sniff his armpits. He smells pretty nice too. His mood improves with a growing relief at not having just died, and he chuckles a bit as he imagines how unpleasant his bathing must have been for somebody. A remote control for the vidcast sits on the nightstand over to his left. He shifts his legs as he turns to grab it and feels an unusual scratching between his thighs. He shoves his hand under the sheets and into his hospital pajama pants to find the cause. A bassy grunt of surprise sounds in his throat. His hair's been cut. All of it. No wonder it feels cold in here. He searches his body. Except for his eyebrows, he's as smooth and hairless as an old leather jacket. He scratches his groin out of habit. Feels like a stranger touching his hairless ball sack. He pauses, then cups his scrotum delicate-like. Feels its soft, wrinkled surface take the shape of his hard, calloused hand. A ragged grunt of unexpected pleasure jumps from his lips. When the duty nurse returns to check on his condition, Zydrunas has the sheets and blankets kicked to the foot of the bed, entranced as he massages his testicles like a couple of meditation spheres. His naked legs bent high and spread out wide, his pajama pants bunched up and pushed down around his ankles, his skin like dried and salted meat, a stark, dark contrast to the bleached white of the bedding around him. Dying at the edge of a blue-white star is the furthest thing from his mind. The nurse's embarrassed chuckle startles Zydrunas out of his musings. "Time to put those away, yes," the Datubu says. The creature enters, carrying a small pile of folded clothes. "You cut off all my hair," Zydrunas says with his raspy, strangled voice. "We did," the bristly insectoid replies with an amused quivering of his mandibles. "You had a nasty accident out there on the causeway. We had to make sure you didn't have any life-threatening injuries, and your hair kept snagging on all our equipment, yes." "Never had bald nuts," Zydrunas continues to massage himself. It's an enchanting sensation. "All right, you," the nurse says with impatience, his cross-species amusement having passed. It makes him wonder how humankind ever figured out how to leave their home world in the first place. "Stop with the masturbation, yes. I brought you some new clothes along with your old ones, washed, in case you want to wear something new." Zydrunas grunts acknowledgement. He releases his genitals and sits up to inspect the pile of clothes the nurse set on the nightstand. "There are a few new pairs of socks and underwear. We threw out your old ones. They were just strips of threadbare cloth anyway, yes." The nurse busies himself with checking the room's bedpan, salivating in anticipation. He becomes a bit disappointed when he finds it empty. Moving on, he checks the old man's vitals. Zydrunas, in the meanwhile, closely inspects each piece of clothing. He holds up a lively hot magenta shirt. The nurse presses a stethoscope against the ancient man's black leathery chest and reads the diagnostics scrolling down the device's display screen. "Take a deep, slow breath," the nurse instructs. Zydrunas performs the request and asks, "So, how am I doing?" "Eh?" The nurse turns his huge compound eyes toward the old vagabond. "You responded to our treatments remarkably well for a human of your age and lifestyle who was hit by a hovercard at high speed, yes?" Zydrunas responds. "Can I go then?" "Don't see why not. Just try to avoid those busy roads, yes?" Sitting on his favorite stool in Gary's diner the following day, Zydrunas tries to forget his worries and enjoy the neurosedative field, but his mind's too agitated. He can't settle down. "Maybe it's just, a glitch or something. Nothing to worry about," Gary says encouragingly. Maybe. "I mean, you haven't had one of your mix-ups since you got out of the hospital, right?" Gary asks. "Nope." "And you ain't slept yet, right?" "Nope. Can't." "And what did you say once? You usually get 2 or 3 mix-ups every day and night, right?" "Something like that." "There you go." Gary arcs his trunk up in front of Zydrunas for emphasis. "You just got shook up is all." Maybe you're right." "Course I am. You only been out a day. Hell, after you actually get some sleep, I'll bet you be good as new, and you'll be having more mix-ups than you can shake a stick at." Gary slaps Zydrunas playfully on the shoulder. "Of course, with all the running around you'll be getting into, I'll probably have to build you your own private dining room." Gary slaps the old man on the shoulder again, and they both chuckle at the absurdity of the thought. Zydrunas rocks a little out of his seat's pleasure field. The door chime rings. Gary looks over. "Hey, Rasha, Tigalati, Awankto," he calls out, and then he looks back over to Zydrunas. "Be right back," he says, and his face sinks into his body to go over to greet another several of his regulars. Zydrunas looks over to see 3 Kreishu and a bunch of Datubu ink gals walk in as Gary's face emerges from his huge purple trunk of a body at that end of the counter. Zydrunas turns back to his coffee, puckers his lips, and thinks. Maybe he shouldn't worry too much about his lack of mix-ups. Like Gary said, the truth of the matter is, he'll still have to wait for one to happen, whether he worries about it or not. And when he thinks about it, it's actually been nice going through a whole day without suddenly being confused about everything around you and about what you were just doing. Looking at it that way, Gary's right. No mix-ups really is no problem. But hearing that thought in his head makes him feel wrong. Zydrunas can't remember a time when his mind didn't get mixed around. What would he do if it never happened again? What would his life be like? How would he help people? Fix things? The old man shudders. And without his mix-ups, he's still stuck. Still can't sleep. Well, that's not exactly true. Zydrunas has no trouble falling asleep. He's simply afraid to, because every time he does, he's the ooze, the slime. Pops through a PRF gate and ends up dying at the edge of that damned blue-white star. And each time he wakes up screaming in pain and cursing Krulakar Cholem. Zydrunas looks over at the group that just walked in, being seated by the hostess. He watches them look at their menus. A whole day since he left the hospital, and he hasn't had a single mix-up. Not one in a whole day. Maybe Gary's right about that too. Maybe it's because his mind is so shook up at seeing the death of the slime, at somehow dying with the slime, that it puts up an automatic block against getting any more trips through time. And so, his mind is stuck there, at the block, with the slime. He thinks about that. It makes sense in a way. And maybe all Zydrunas has to do is unblock his mind, and that'll free it up. Let him sleep and get his mix-ups going again. Kind of like unblocking a drain. He grunts at how sensible the idea sounds. Now, all he has to do is figure out how to get it done. With a nervous look at his dry, calloused hands folded on the counter, he decides he'll have to try to force a mix-up. An image of the blue-white star flashes across his mind's eye. His head automatically jerks back. Then he sees the diner again. Sees Gary. Anxiously, the old man licks his cracked, charcoal-black lips. Okay. He won't try to force a mix-up now. Not here. Not in the diner. He licks his lips again. He'll go upstairs. Get some privacy. He grunts again. He really hopes this works. All he wants to do is lay down and drift off to sleep without dying with the ooze again. Without burning to death. He looks back over at the seated group and licks his lips again. Saying goodbye to Gary moments later, the old man makes sure his big tree-like friend promises to note what this newest group of diners orders for dessert. Gary gives him a questioning look, but Zydrunas' only answer is a promise to return in a couple hours as he waves to the cooks on duty, slides off his favorite stool, and ambles over to push the call button for the elevator in the back, by the restrooms. Its doors open smoothly. Zydrunas enters alone and holds his thumb just over the emergency stop button. A small scanning light reads his fingerprint, and a green button with a Z on it appears at the top of the panel. He pushes it, and the elevator whisks into motion. When it stops, the doors open to reveal an expansive, lavishly furnished penthouse suite. Gary owns the entire building, and Zydrunas will always have a place here as long as Gary has a say. Zydrunas enters the huge apartment, shedding his clothing all over the floor as he makes his way to the bathroom. 5 minutes later, sitting buck naked on the toilet, he leans forward with his elbows on his knees and stares at a small trash can between his feet. He looks around before he gets started to make sure he's remembered everything. Almost forgot! He rises, takes a step toward the wall, flicks a switch, and steps back to the toilet as the room's ventilation system circulates fresh air through the ceiling. He closes his eyes, furrows his dark brow, and tries to force his mind to mix around to a couple of hours ahead. The boiling surface of a blue-white star fills his entire field of vision. The ooze only feels the all-consuming heat, but Zydrunas sees their doom. Unfathomable searing pain burns through every fiber of Ud's being as he falls faster and faster toward a horrible, scorching death. Zydrunas' eyes flutter wide open. He utters a short shout of pained surprise. Sprawled on the floor at the base of the toilet, he stares at the bathroom wall in a moronic daze. A few quiet seconds pass. Acrid vomit pools under his chest. The side of his face lay on the side of the small, overturned trash can. A pounding ache bangs in the center of his skull. Tears stream from his terrified, bloodshot eyes. He blinks, coughs a couple of times, then raises himself up. His dark forearms slide in half-digested food. He stands as if in slow motion, groans, clears his throat, spits to the side, and then freezes as his bowels shake angrily with a loud, bubbly groan. The following morning finds Zydrunas walking through the cold, wintry streets. Yesterday, after his sickness passed, he couldn't do much of anything else. He was exhausted, spent. He tried to get some rest, but when he fell asleep, he wound up reliving Guru's death at the edge of the blue-white star. Woke up screaming each time. Zydrunas looks over at the rising blue sun between the buildings to his left and flinches. Will Rayrig Prime be the star that kills him? He stops in his tracks and shakes his head to straighten out his thoughts. The star kills Guru. It kills the ooze, goddammit! He curses Krulakar's existence with an unintelligible growl, takes another sip of steaming coffee from the paper cup in his shaky right hand, and looks up to find himself in front of the main branch of the city's public library. Funny how that took no time. He tosses the unfinished coffee into a nearby trash can and mounts the library steps. Time to search the transnet, see if he can find a story to fit to the image of the hateful man the slime burned into his mind.